ISO, the International Organization for Standardization, has recently released a draft of the new edition of its flagship standard, that is, of course, ISO 9001. The new edition of the standard is expected to be published in September 2026. As I'm sure you know, ISO 9001 is one of the most popular standards in the world, if not the most popular international standard. It establishes requirements for a quality management system that can be implemented by any organization, regardless of its size and sector. There are over 1 million companies worldwide certified to this standard. The current edition of ISO 9001 is 10 years old. It's been published in 2015, and the new version of this standard is eagerly expected. This video is about the recently published draft and what to expect from the new edition of ISO 9001 based on what we have in the draft. By the way, this process of revising standards periodically is a normal one. It is intended to keep standards relevant as the world moves on. We are now expecting the 6th edition of ISO 9001. This standard began its journey almost 40 years ago in 1987 and went through 5 revisions until now. I don't want to keep you waiting, so I'll cut it short. We should not expect big changes in the 2026 edition of ISO 9001 compared to the 2015 version. While there has been talk about including topics such as artificial intelligence and sustainability or cybersecurity in the new edition of the standard, none of these are present in the requirements from the draft. I'll make a brief comparison between the recently published draft and the current edition of ISO 9001, the one published in 2015. And let me tell you from the beginning that there are no new clauses in this draft. Its structure is similar to the existing standard. We have the same 10 clauses or chapters, out of which the first 3, which are scope, normative references, and terms and definitions, do not include requirements for the quality management system. In chapter 4 of the draft, titled Context of the Organization, we have the requirements about climate change that were not present in the 2015 edition of the standard, but that were introduced by the 2024 amendment to ISO 9001. So this is not something new. It was always the expectation that the text of that amendment will become part of the new edition of the standard when it will come out, and this is exactly what happens. Other than that, we have the same requirements about determining internal and external issues, part of the context, identifying interested parties and their needs and expectations, and also establishing the scope of the quality management system. These are all requirements that we have in the current edition of ISO 9001. Then in chapter 5, titled Leadership, we don't have significant changes. We do have something new in the sense that top management is required to promote a quality culture and ethical behavior. This is something new compared to the 2015 edition of ISO 9001. It's somewhat aligned with another standard published by ISO in 2025, the new edition of ISO 37001. That's the anti-bribery management standard, where top management is expected to promote an anti-bribery culture within the organization. So we have a similar requirement in this clause about the quality culture. And we also have a note in the draft stating that an organization's quality culture and ethical behavior are reflected in its shared values, attitudes, and established practices. Now, during an audit of a quality management system, I think it would be quite challenging for the auditor to assess and to confirm that such a culture has been established. The limited time available to the auditor is the obvious problem. In relation to the quality policy, which is one of the key documents of this management system, we have an additional requirement compared to the 2015 edition of the standard. The quality policy must take into account the context of the organization and also support its strategic direction. That's not a major change, I would say. Clause 6, planning, does not bring new requirements compared to the 2015 version. The organization must determine risks and opportunities, but again, it is not required to do a risk assessment nor to document this identification. The draft separates between risks and opportunities. We have now more emphasis on opportunities, with the organization clearly required to determine, to analyze, and evaluate opportunities for improvement and to plan actions to address them. In the 2015 edition of the standard, risks and opportunities were addressed together. Now we have them separated in distinct subclauses. We also have in this chapter the requirements for the quality objectives and the plans for their achievement, as well as requirements for changes and how to plan them, similar to what we find in the 2015 edition of ISO 9001. Then only minor additions in Clause 7, titled Support. For example, the draft requires the organization to ensure that the persons doing work under its control are aware of the organizational quality culture and ethical behavior. Chapter 8, which is clearly the heart of ISO 9001, is basically unchanged compared to the 2015 edition of the standard. The same subclauses and topics covered, no additional requirements. Similarly, no big changes in Clause 9, performance evaluation. Here, the audit program gets a dedicated subclause, but the requirements are the same. The organization must monitor the perception of customers on the degree to which their needs and expectations have been met. Internal audits have to be conducted at planned intervals, and top management shall review the quality management system periodically to ensure that it continues to be suitable, adequate, effective, and also aligned with the company's strategic direction. Finally, the last chapter in the draft, chapter 10, does not introduce anything new. It has similar requirements to what we find in ISO 9001-2015. The draft also includes an annex similar to the 2015 version of the standard. This annex is intended to provide clarification and to prevent the misunderstanding of the requirements for the quality management system. It is meant as guidance to help organizations better understand and implement the QMS. There are changes in this annex compared to the existing standard, but this annex is not mandatory. An organization implementing a quality management system may completely disregard the annex and still comply to the standard. As we know, ISO has a dedicated standard with guidelines for the implementation of a quality management system according to ISO 9001, and this standard is ISO 9002. Most probably, this standard will also be updated once the new edition of ISO 9001 will be published. So, that's my quick overview of the draft recently published by ISO. For many, this may feel a bit disappointing, as the expectations were maybe higher for more changes. Of course, there is no guarantee that the final version will look exactly like this draft. Further modifications may occur. We'll have to wait and see. However, based on what we have available today, it seems unlikely that the 2026 edition of ISO 9001 will bring major updates compared to the 2015 version. If you're interested in quality management and ISO 9001, then you should know that I have an online course on Udemy that presents in detail all the requirements of this standard, along with auditing tips for those who conduct internal or external audits for quality management systems. You'll find the link to the course in the description of this video, along with our website, Riksert Education, where you can explore more courses and resources on management systems and ISO standards.